Hello, digital world. Welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced in Later. It's another movie review time, our third movie review in less than a week. How exciting is that? We are truly living in the good times. Times when you get to hear me talk more frequently than you would normally. We're going to get right into today's review, and it probably won't be very long because I don't have that much to say about it. Not in a bad way, just in a... There's not much that really needs to be said, I think. Overall, I had a good time. Today we are reviewing Elemental. It is the newest animated film from Pixar Studios. The 27th, I believe, overall, but don't quote me on that one. It's a film about elements, living in their own little place, Element City, mainly focusing on a young fire element called Ember, her family dynamic, and her budding relationship when she accidentally one day runs into a water guy called Wade. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I don't think it's one of Pixar's best. It's certainly right there in the middle, not one of their worst, that's for sure. I think it excels in certain places like animation, certain emotional story beats, music. I'll get all into that in a second. And I do think that it's fairly average when it comes to anything you would expect from Pixar, you know, to break new ground emotion-wise, to hit at story puts you wouldn't really think of before. There's a bit of wasted potential in here. But all in all, it was a good time. So basically, the basic plot of this film, quite simply, is we follow Ember, mostly. She is a young fire person. So these elements live in this city. They are literally elements. You got fire, water, earth, and air. Very much like Zootopia, they all live in this giant city. Unlike Zootopia, there is a certain issue on class or asylum seekers or immigration. There's a lot of that in there when it comes to the fire people. They are the newest element to come and live in this city. The city is not really built for them. It's very much a water-heavy place. They have their own little niche village off to the side, their own little Irish town, their own little Chinatown, if you will. And much as you would expect from it, everybody is a bit antagonistic towards each other. Elements don't really mix in this world. Very specifically, fire. Earth, water, and air seem to have a bit of a way that they get along with each other. Fire tends to piss people off, and they get pissed off in turn, especially fire and water. But Ember comes from a family that came to Element City. Her father opened up a shop, and her whole life she's been groomed that one day when she's ready, her father will retire and she gets to run the store. But she has an issue with her temper, meaning she often blows her top, gets frustrated, flustered. So at a point when her father's getting quite old and should be retiring, he can't because he doesn't think she's ready, because she needs to get that under control. One day while she's trying to sort out all these problems, there's a leak in the basement, and washing into her life comes Wade, the water guy. He's a city inspector, and it starts off these cavalcade of events. First, he is antagonistic towards each other because he's trying to write up her store for being not up to code, which means the store gets shuttered down. That then turns into a buddy story situation where once Ember wins over Wade to her way of thinking, they have to rush around and do a certain series of events. First, they have to convince the inspectors not to shut down the shop. Then they have to figure out why the leak washed Wade into their store into the first place. Yada, yada, yada. What I didn't realize going into the film, because the trailers didn't really hint at it, was this film is actually a romance film, which apart from maybe Wall-E and Eve in Wall-E, and I guess Flick in A Bug's Life, I don't think Pixar have really tackled a romantic story as their head thing, the one primary focus of it. So Ember and Wade basically have a sort of a Romeo and Juliet style relationship. They instantly have a liking to each other, but they are very, very different. Ember is fire, obviously, quick to anger, panicky, stressy, all of that stuff. Wade goes with the flow, but he's also very emotional and will cry at anything. He'll see a sunrise and cry at that. So in every respect, they shouldn't get along, but they find themselves growing closer and closer. So about halfway through the film, it shifts to that. They spend more and more time with each other. Ember starts to question her life, essentially. Does she actually want to take over this store, Or does she have her own hopes and dreams that she wants to do, that she's afraid her father will not approve of? All the while, her and Wade end up getting very, 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 very close. To a point where as you would expect in a romance film like this. Eventually the parents will find out, there's a big hablooey, people get torn apart, but overall, hopefully, love will prevail. The positives in here, as I said at the start, animation, fantastic. Pixar, of course, very, very good at animation. But I think what's really unique about this one is because it's about all these elements, the animation is probably not like what you've seen before. Animation is used specifically to tell the story in here. The way fire is depicted, or water, or earth, or air. They have their own anatomy, their own way of moving about and thinking and touching things and all of that, which is constant throughout the whole film. And to come up with this idea is one thing, but then to animate it in such a way that it seems so natural is pretty awesome. And it ranges from something simple as just if Ember walks through some water on the ground, you just get little smoke off her feet, to full on her sitting in the sand turns it into glass. Like, there's some really cool animation imagery that really takes advantage of what if fire does this with water? What if earth does this with air? It's a very visually appeasing film. The soundtrack in here is also really, really cool. There's a lot of, it's hard to say exactly, but there seems to be inspiration for the certain elements outside in real life, like their sort of culture. It's very specifically, fire seems to have like an Irish background. So whenever you're hearing about fire stories or fire things are happening, there's like this really cool Celtic background music. And there's some really good use of string guitars and all of that stuff as well. I really dug it. I thought it really heightened a lot of what was going on. Even if the story you were seeing was something you've seen 1,000 times before, that music accompanying it was really, really enhancing the scene and getting you to feel the emotions that you were supposed to be feeling. Like most films, I did think about listening to the soundtrack on the way home afterwards. But with this one, I was thinking about listening to the soundtrack on the way home while the movie was still playing because I was digging it so much. I really liked Ember and Wade. Very much, I liked their romantic story. I'm a sucker for that stuff. Even if I don't really like the film that the romance story is going on in, it's like West Side Story, for instance, I will still really dig the romantic stuff because I don't know, it's just, for some reason, I like that. I like feeling that. I like feeling the connection that people have with each other in these sorts of stories. Even on something like Titanic, and that boat sinking into the water, I'm all about, no, but then Jack and Rose won't be able to kiss again. It's so upsetting. And because I wasn't expecting Ember and Wade's relationship to be romantic, I guess because it's been a while, looking back at Pixar's films, looking back at Disney's films, a lot of what they used to do consistently, they don't do much of anymore. I guess because they're branching out and trying new things. But back in the day, in the Disney Renaissance, that's where you had the most iconic romantic stories. Aladdin and Jasmine, Simba and Nala, Tarzan and Jane, Hercules and Meg, Mulan and Shang, all of those characters, Belle and Beast, all of that good stuff. And especially with Pixar, a lot of the relationships are more friendships, overcoming odds together as besties. I was not prepared that, Ember and Wade are actually going to be a romantic pairing. And because they're so different, but because Wade is so open and emotional and pulls Ember in and allows her to feel the things he's feeling, he's very open about how he feels about her, which makes you go, oh, it's very, very sweet. It's the sucker for me. It got me right where I expected it would. So maybe I'm a little biased on that. In terms of the negative here, as I said, apart from the romantic stuff, a lot of what's in here you have seen before. The classic child living in their parents' shadow. The parent wants them to do one thing, but they start to realize maybe they want to do something else. You have seen it 1,000 times before, and this film doesn't really do a lot to spike that up or twist it, apart from it being, it's fire and water, which leads to the extra bit. I don't think they took advantage of the premise of elements and elemental city. The film's very laser focused on the fire community and then by extension, certain water characters, specifically Wade and his family. But in this giant city of elements and all that, you do start to think, what's the rest of the city like? What do the air and the earth people have going on? The air and earth characters are not in here, essentially. You have a supporting air character for a couple of scenes, and there's a little boy earth thing who's like the comedic relief. But otherwise, they have no impact in what's going on in the story. The way the movie's set up and the marketing and even the title Elemental, and in those opening shots where you're being introduced to Elemental City, you're like, okay, there's air and there's earth. What will we learn about them? Nothing. So in a way where Zootopia succeeded is you were focused on Judy and Nick, but you also got to explore Zootopia as a whole. Whereas here, Element City is a backdrop, but not necessarily elaborated on and engaged. And it's a very interesting, unique concept. I think it would have been cool to see that more, but unfortunately we didn't get a lot of that. And I guess one final issue I have is that it's very basic, the story as well. It spells it out to you in a tell don't show sort of way, which does always frustrate me. A lot of the Pixar films that are top tier have managed to tell story in visualization and emotion and allowing the audience to learn and understand as the movie goes along. With this, it's like it doesn't trust the audience to get what's going on unless it tells you exactly what you need to know at certain points. There are too many scenes in this movie where a character goes, "You don't understand. Years ago when I was a young fire," and then we flash back and we see some stuff. I don't mind that sort of storytelling, but I prefer it when it's done in a way where it's not, okay, story comes to a halt, so we can do a flashback and give you some extra information which will come into play later on. That sort of stuff I always feel is a little bit lazy, and that happens in here about 3 or 4 times. So it's stuff like that which holds it back from really pushing the bar and pushing the envelope in anything that it's really doing in here. But at the end of the day, it's still a very sweet, a very entertaining film. I really love the animation, I really love the soundtrack, and I loved Ember and Wade and their little romantic pairing. They may be one of my favorite romance stories in movies of all time. It's a bit early to be claiming that, but whatever, that's just the kind of guy I am. Overall, Elemental was a fun watch. Give it a 7 out of 10. It's definitely better than a lot of the other films I've seen recently. It's certainly not a snooze fest, no matter what people tell you. If you're looking for a film to see with your family, if you're looking to just see a film by yourself because you love animation and you love Pixar films, this won't disappoint. Don't go in and hold it to the bar of Soul and Inside Out. If you want every Pixar film to be like those, you're going to be disappointed more than half the time. Allow yourself to just prepare and have a good time, and then if it's better than you expect, you can be pleasantly surprised. There you are. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Nice short review, but it's a nice short sweet film. Doesn't really need that much more elaboration. I'll be back next week. No movies next week, so I will bring you another Christopher Nolan installment, whether you like it or not. But until then, keep safe, keep kind, be loving to one another. Love and appreciate you as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.